again because earlier today we started dissecting my film, Repka, Turnip in Russian, and then the battery ran out, and I had to delete that whole stream. But then I was like, and I thought I would continue tomorrow. I even said goodbye to Joseph Corcoran, who was the only person in the chat at the point. So I was like, well, I'll continue tomorrow. But then I was like, well, maybe I should continue today. I still am in that kind of mood, and it's still the 2-year anniversary exactly for that film today. The night is, the day, what is the phrase? The night is still young or something like that. So I was like, well, why don't we continue? So we're continuing from where we left off. By the way, you cannot find that stream I did before. I usually save all the streams, but because the battery ran out, that stream was like going endlessly. And YouTube removed the function where you can end the stream. So practically, I wasn't able to end that stream. It just ran out of battery, and then I couldn't stop it. So it went on and on and on and on. And because I couldn't stop it, I decided to just delete it, unfortunately. So if you weren't present at the stream, unfortunately, you missed everything that was there. You cannot watch it again now, but Joseph, he was present at the stream, so I'm sure he can tell you everything that happened during it. So, okay, so let's not waste any time. Let's continue dissecting the film. Okay, so as I said, these two shots, this one right here, and this one right here, these two shots were the very first shots that were filmed in the whole movie. Chronologically speaking, they're almost the first thing to happen, obviously. We went through a little bit of the film, so they're not the very first thing, but in terms of the schedule, these were some of the first two shots that we filmed. So this is a very important, obviously, shot. And so the grandpa here now goes down to inspect the turnip. And now this shot is completely different day, many days later, completely different. So this shot is no longer one of the first ones we filmed. In fact, this whole scene right here was refilmed because originally I shot this scene, but the problem is, well, you don't see it from this angle, but when we're about to get there, when you see the angle of the house, the problem is that when it comes to that tree house, there were a lot of these bags stocked under the treehouse because my dad used it as some kind of, place to keep, store things during the winter. And so there were a lot of these very heavy bags that I myself couldn't really move. And so we filmed it that way. But then I was like, no way I'm keeping that in the movie. That just looks ugly. So we reshot that whole thing after we put those bags away. And there was nothing left under the house. But we're about to get to that shot for me to explain. So here the grandfather comes up, and once again, as I said before during the previous stream, for those who missed it, every character has their distinct movements, their distinct features. And with the grandpa, he claps a lot, he points a lot, and here he also does a lot of these arm gestures where he's kind of shocked. And sometimes he moves his back backwards. He kind of leans backwards a bit. Unlike the grandma, who we're about to see later on, who leans forwards, on the other hand. Oh, hello, Joseph. Yes, hello, yes. Great to see you here again. Yes, I decided to continue the stream. Okay, finally, we're getting here. Yeah, so as I said before, this was refilmed much later on. So originally this too was shot on the very first day, but this one was refilmed completely because when we initially shot this, under the house here, there were a lot of these big bags, and I just did not like the way they looked. They just ruined the whole scene for me. They looked very ugly. So this was all reshot. This is a refilmed scene. Originally, this was filmed on the very first day along with those other two shots I mentioned before, but I redid all of this because I was just not satisfied. I was not. And obviously, here we have the first example of me playing two characters in one shot. As I mentioned before, I play all of the characters in this movie, and I'm really satisfied with the effects in this. Because very rarely in this movie did I actually use green screen. I used a completely different method to combine myself. I positioned the camera on a tripod, I filmed myself on this side, Then I changed my clothing, didn't move the camera, went on this side, and then I found the line where it crosses. Well, it could be any line, so that but just in between here, and I combined the two shots into one, and it just fit perfectly. Now the problem here is when you move from one part of the shot to another, the lighting kind of changes, because based on where you are standing in the frame, it kind of changes up the lighting. So the hardest part was kind of getting the lighting for both these two parts to match up, so that it blends seamlessly. And in some shots, it did blend seamlessly, including here. So I'm happy about that. Now, here we have me playing the turnip, of course. I already mentioned earlier how you could see it in the very beginning, but here you get a closer look at it. And this right here, the turnip, obviously, here with the turnip, what you will notice is that the hat that is meant to represent this vegetable, this is like a pear costume, or it's a chicken costume. I don't remember. It's either a pear or a chicken. Yes, I know, completely different things, pear and chicken, but I don't remember which it was. I think it's a pear. And this is actually from when I was 4 years old. It's very old. This is something we bought that I was like using for one of my like school plays in reception. So this is a very old costume what I'm wearing on my thing here. And I also wanted to put some stuff on my sleeves as well, and maybe even on my pants, but even though the hat thing kind of fits still, the other things did not fit at all, because they were for little children, and by that point obviously I'm fully grown, so I didn't fit in it. Now, what you'll notice is that compared to the grandpa, who once again is very exaggerated, very over the top, Repka is by far the most poker-faced neutral character in this whole thing. She, well, she, I don't know. It's definitely, I don't know. Repka is turnip. What is a turnip? A turnip is an it, right? Yeah, it. Okay, well, it. Let's say it. It is very, it doesn't care about anything. It's really neutral. It has very few emotions. It's very... You won't see it smiling at all during the film. You will barely see it have any emotion. And my sister actually really loved that. It was her favorite character because it appealed so much to her. And that's what I like about this film. This is similar to Elimination with Sing. When you present a lot of different characters of all sorts of different types, every audience member will find somebody that they like, with no exception. So someone like my sister, who likes these less emotional characters, she really liked the turnip. But then you look at, for instance, someone else, and they really like the granddaughter, or the grandfather, or the grandmother, because when I specifically tried making them so different. And this is, once again, returning to, if you weren't on the previous stream, which I deleted, of course. Well, I only see Joseph here right now again, but if you're watching this later on and you weren't on the previous stream, which you can no longer watch, I want to repeat myself that there was a woman who critiqued this film because she felt like why am I, clapping as the grandfather? Why am I constantly pointing? She was like, you need to be yourself. You need to stop overdoing it and everything. But I specifically exaggerated every character so much in a different direction so that they could all be so different, so that every character could appeal to somebody in some way, and yet they could all be so different. Because when one person is playing all these characters, you need to add a lot of variety. You need to spice things up. Otherwise, it's going to be getting really boring really quick. So that's why I'm trying my best to make it all different. But there, by the way, this is the only time in the whole film that you will see the grandfather without his glasses. And to me, it actually, by this point, because the grandfather was wearing the glasses the whole time, seeing myself without the glasses as the grandfather for some reason is so weird. I don't know, there's some uncanny valley effect by this point. It just looks so weird. It really doesn't make... It really is crazy, because he wears the glasses so often that by this point, him not having them is just, something just feels wrong, Something feels wrong. So this is the only point. Now, when he takes off the glasses, you can actually hear a sound effect of the glasses kind of moving. That is something that is not from the set. That is added in post-production. That is additional Foley, additional sound design, which I specifically added in there. Most of the time when in movies, but in my movies, but in general in movies, when you hear those little sounds, you know, footsteps, everything, it's usually not from the set. It's usually added in post-production. It's usually something that's added later on. And here when he takes off his glasses and there's that little sound of them folding, that's me recording it later on. Let me check how much battery. Okay, 71, that's good. That's a lot. Now the music here, I really love the music here. This is Here Come the Raindrops by Rid Mathis. And I don't know, there's something, it's meant to be a kindergarten children's music, but there's something so deep about it. It feels like, something about this music, like, it feels fun, but at the same time it feels like someone is really annoyed or something is being exposed. It feels like a person who no longer cares about something, and it's just like da 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 da. Just, I love that tune. It's so unique. I don't know. Rid Mathis, he's a genius. I don't know many of his other compositions. They haven't really appealed to me. But Here Come the Raindrops is fantastic. And how I came across Here Come the Raindrops is there's this political channel. John Talks. This right-wing political channel. And I came across one of his videos. And in one of his videos, I didn't really even check out the video. I just came across it kind of by accident. Let's say put it that way. But what I liked about the video, I don't remember the topic. It was just some kind of, I don't know, walking around, whatever. But what I liked about the video is the music. That is where I heard Here Come the Raindrops. And I tried to tweet to John Talks. No response as usual. A lot of people don't like responding to my tweets. A lot of people do like ignoring me, which is fair enough. So I was like, okay, well, we have Shazam. And Shazam has failed me in the past, but it's also been successful with the more popular tunes. So it picked up on it, it gave me Here Come the Raindrops. Now I just listen to it all the time. And it fit this moment really greatly, because you can see that Grandpa is shocked and he's frustrated, but he's also kind of finding this whole situation amusing. And all those three emotions combined kind of are really well represented with this tune, which I think really goes well together with the scene. So I'm very happy about how it turned out here. Now, even him rubbing his eyes, that's also a sound effect that I added later on, and that's me kind of rubbing my hand or something, because, once again, stuff like that doesn't get picked up on the microphone, but it does add to the realism, because movies are not just what you pick up on set. Movies are like architecture. Like a cake, you build them layer by layer. First you have what you have on set, then you have the ambience, then you have the Foley, then you have those sound effects, then you have the score, then you have and it adds by layer. Movies are much more complex than most people give them credit for, so there's a lot of sound effects design later on added here. But here he claps again. What is this? This is like the 5th time he's clapped. This is the 5th time he's clapped. You see, I clap all the time. And once again, this woman, she said, oh, why are you clapping? Well, do you think it's comfortable for me to clap all the time? No, or lean backwards all the time? No, but this is the character. It's specific. It's not something random or something stupid. It is a part of his personality trait. That's why I clap all the time. By the way, I will say that the secret advantage of clapping, this was not intentional. I would never do it just to make my job easier, but it did make my job easier unintentionally, because it allowed me to sync up the audio with the video. Because, once again, as I said in the previous stream, I recorded the audio of my character speaking on a hidden microphone, and then I filmed it on a camera. So then I had to combine it, and to perfectly lip sync, match the stuff, because I didn't have any kind of, clap in the beginning, which they usually do in movies, because I find that unnecessary. That really just slows down the process for me. That it doesn't help in the long run. It's for editors in movies, but I really find it unnecessary, and for me, it doesn't help at all. It only distracts. So I don't use any like clapping thing, but these claps really helped out match up the sound because I heard the clap in the audio, and then I saw the clap in the video, and I could perfectly sync it up. Whereas with the lips, it's much harder, and you can make a lot of mistakes, and we don't want any of that. That's very unprofessional if we screw up how we combine the sound and the video. Never make that mistake. Okay, this is the one time that the turnip will kind of show almost, well, I'm lying, not the only time, but this is almost the only time that the turnip shows any emotion in this whole film. And here, I'm playing the turnip, I'm kind of mocking the grandfather, I'm parodying him. You look at the grandfather, he's like laughing, he's so shocked at how large this turnip is in the garden. And the turnip is kind of, putting his chin up, kind of, oh, you're like kind of, mocking him, making fun of him. Look here, if you look at the turnip, it's a whole different thing, because most people will look at the grandfather, but you look at the turnip and you will see a lot of hidden emotions here. Look, look here, this is hilarious. I mean, I don't really have the right to say that, because that's for the audience to decide, but I think a lot of audience members, if they paid more attention to it, would find it hilarious. Here, look, first of all, he's pointing. He's like, oh, this guy, oh my goodness, what is this guy doing now? Oh my goodness, what is he doing now? So he's pointing, the turnip is pointing. Now he's like spinning next to his head, saying, oh, this guy is crazy. You know how people spin next to their head to show that the guy is crazy? So he's now showing the grandfather is crazy. This is hidden stuff. This is not apparent because we're paying attention to the grandfather, but if you look at the turnip, all of these emotions are shown. And now literally pulling out the tongue and being like, da 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 da, to kind of make fun of the grandfather. And now the eyes, and now kind of, kind of like that. All of these very interesting hand gestures, everything. I'm very happy with how I performed this character. Because the turnip only has one line of dialogue in the whole film, and yet it is also one of the most interesting characters because my sister liked it the most. How that is possible, I do not know, but if that is possible, then that means I did a good job, which I'm happy about. Now I want to rewatch this scene again, but now pay attention to the grandfather, because we now cover up the turnip, and now we're looking at the grandfather. A lot of hand gestures, a lot. Once again, he moves his hands a lot like that, and now he mentions a lot of cool plans, because he's saying, he has this monologue. If you read the subtitles, or if you know Russian, you listen to the original Russian things. He's saying, I always planted all of these things, but none of them ever grew. And I specifically, because this is a Russian fairy tale, and usually in Russia it's pretty common, when it comes to fairy tales, all that stuff is, kartoshka, potato, which means potatoes, all that stuff. Usually, not a lot of these exotic fruits get mentioned here at all, or in passing conversation, especially with like older people. But here I have this grandfather talk about how he's planted pumpkins, mangosteens, which is actually a Thai fruit that's very tough to find in Russia in general, and it's actually my favorite fruit of all time, but that's besides the matter, and I love it, and it's from Thailand. But he talks about planting mangosteen, which is hilarious to me, because, it's this common grandpa, which usually he would just, grandpas here would plant onions, potatoes. But here's, planting mangosteen, which I don't know if they would even grow here because of the climate. Mulberries, which mulberries grow here, but they're a more delicacy thing. They're not a very common berry in terms of how many people enjoy them. I really love them. Shilkavitsa, mulberries, I really enjoy them. They have this wonderful sweet taste, and they're much better than blackberries, in my opinion. Irga, which apparently doesn't even have an English translation. I don't think if they even know about that berry in other countries, because barely anyone knows it at all anywhere. Irga, I love Irga. Irga is my favorite berry of all time. Especially, it has the most unique flavor ever, and I think and it's a shame that it's barely available anywhere. But whenever I go to Tomsk, if I'm in the right time, which is it's a very short season from the end of July to the beginning of August, and if you go later in August or earlier in July, you will not get it. But if you go during the precise time in Tomsk, in the lovely city of Tomsk, where I just came from a few days ago. I was there with my relatives, and you eat that berry, it's delicious. And I actually got the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity to eat a little bit of that berry when just towards the end of my trip. And it was delicious as always. It just reaffirmed my belief that it's the best berry ever. Honeysuckle now. Honeysuckle is much more common, obviously, but also a very unique berry. Delicious, absolutely delicious. Now he's saying, once again, very expressive character. He's saying, "I nothing ever grew," and he's straight up, saying nothing, and he's crossing his arm. So very much, you have to emote with your body when you're playing characters like these to keep the audience entertained. Now he's shocked. He's once again this gesture, which I already talked about in the past. Once again, a clap. What is this? This is sixth time, right? 7 for sixth. And a point. Look, clap, point. Very, very common. You can literally learn all of the movements of this grandfather after watching this movie a few times. I think it's pretty easy to replicate it. I made it very, very common. Now he's starting to pull out the turnip. Now this goes just as the classic fairy tale. In the classic fairy tale, for those who don't know, it's a classic Russian fairy tale, but nobody really knows about it in other countries. So in the fairy tale, the grandpa tries to pull it out, he doesn't succeed, then he calls the grandmother, so on and so on. So we have him pulling it out now. Now this is once again another shot of me combining it, because here is me basically standing here in my shorts as the grandfather, and here is also me as the turnip. And obviously with this shot, the good thing is if I had to actually touch or interact with the turnip, the effect would have been ruined. But I specifically have the camera down so that you don't see what's going on here as he's pulling it out, and so now the effect works. Unfortunately, I didn't exactly match up the lighting here, so you can actually see the exact thing where the two shots are separated. Here, don't believe me? Look, here it is. I can even see here. Look, here it's darker, here it's lighter. This is where this is the exact line which separates my character as the turnip from my character as the grandfather. I think at some points my grandfather even crossed this line, so I had to cut some parts out because it ruined the effect. Because if my grandfather character goes past this line, then he will be cut here and the effect will be ruined. But this way it's believable. Now the turnip, once again, poker face, no emotion, doesn't care, love it. And my sister loved it especially. But here, I actually get to interact with the turnip, because what I did is I positioned the camera below, and then I had the top of the turnip, which is my hat, and I put it onto like a tall platform and started pretending to be pulling at it. And this way I can actually interact with the turnip without ruining the effect, because I'm not filming myself here, I'm just pulling this turnip, which is the top of this turnip. So kind of by combining that shot before where you couldn't see the top of it with this where you could see the top but you don't see me, I'm kind of avoiding any kind of ruining of the effect, but I'm also really very much making the audience believe what what is in front of them, I suppose. Now, one of the complications in this shot is I had to keep pulling it, but if I actually realistically pulled it up and put it up, then you would see that it would separate from here and it would put up, and you would see there's no head here, so the effect would be ruined. So I have to pretend to actually be putting a lot of force into pulling it, but not actually be pulling anything. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. I really appreciate what you're saying about the great acting. But in case you don't understand, the problem here is that if I actually pulled it, it would go up, and then it would be like, you would understand that there's nothing here. This is not my face here. This is not the turnip. So I had to pretend to be pulling it, but actually not move it at all. Otherwise, the effect would be ruined. So that was hard, because I have to put in all this effort and pretend to be putting all this strength in, but actually not move anything at all. Otherwise, everything gets ruined. So that's the complication here. Once again, here we cut back to this shot, which is pretty much the same shot you saw before, just reused. There was very little footage of this, so I reused this like 100 times. Yes, I know it's always better to get brand new footage, but it's not a crime to reuse stuff. If you look at Empire Strikes Back, some of the Star Destroyer Millennium Falcon shots were actually reused. And, I mean, movies do reuse a lot of shots quite often where there's not enough footage. Here there wasn't enough footage, so this is completely reused from what you saw before. So if we go here, remember this shot right here? Yeah, this is the same exact shot again, because there was very little footage I filmed of this. Now this close-up is the very last thing I ever shot, literally. And the reason that I shot it is because there needed to be some connective tissue between this shot right here and what comes, and then between what comes after this. Because what you're about to see, in case you don't remember the film, well, you're about to see it anyway, but I don't want to play it beforehand, is basically he pulls at the turnip so hard that he goes flying away and basically lands on the ground. But the shots didn't really match up together, this one and then him flying off. So I had to put something in between there to serve as connective tissue so that it kind of worked. So at the very end, when I was already pretty much all the costumes were put away, I was like 100% sure that the film is done. I was like, no, there needs to be some connective tissue, otherwise it doesn't work here. So I just quickly came out into the garden, and I quickly put the thing right up to my face. I don't think I'm even wearing the same t-shirt here, because I didn't have time to change it. I was in such a hurry at that moment. And I filmed a close-up of me to act as a connective tissue, and I think it really worked. So it's a... And besides, there were very few extreme, well, this is not an extreme close-up. Extreme is when it's just the eyes. But there were very few close-ups of my face like this in the whole film. So maybe this is even further better. We got a good look at the grandfather here, and you get a good look at my wonderful crooked teeth and everything. So, okay, here we go. Okay, actually. I'm gonna put on slow mode for just a second, because I want to find this frame. Now this one because I need to connect to the next shot of me flying off, but it's always very hard for me to jump up high enough, you know. A lot of people find it easy to jump. I don't find it too easy to jump, you know. I don't jump really high, so this one I reshot a couple of times to jump high enough to connect to the next shot. But then we have the next shot. The next shot, before I even show it to you, which if you've already seen the movie, which I assume a lot of people who will be watching the stream or are watching the stream did, I assume you've watched the film, but the next shot it's the only shot in the whole movie that made everyone laugh. There's not a single person who's watched it yet who hasn't laughed at this next shot. And everyone laughed at it the most. It was everyone's favorite joke in the whole film. I did not expect this joke to work out so well, but somehow it did. I don't know how it did, but it somehow did. In this the next shot is him flying off, and everyone was just laughing their heads off at him flying off and crashing onto the ground from pulling it too much. In fact, even my cousin Sasha Burs, who is literally a poker face person. She has very few emotions. She is very neutral on everything. She's very serious about everything. She laughs, but she also laughs very rarely. It's very hard to make her laugh. There were only 2 points where I saw her. I was specifically looking at her reaction a few days ago when I was showing her the movie for the first time. And I was specifically looking very closely at her face, and there were only 2 points in the whole film when she actually smiled a bit. And this one actually made her really smile, and it's very rare that she does. So if even she smiled, then I know that this joke really worked. So here we have him flying off. Here. Let's watch this again. Full speed, or let me know if full speed or slow speed. Well, let's watch full speed. Yeah, here we go. Now, when I was showing this to my friends at a test kind of screening, they were also really laughing, and these were my friends Krish and George and everything, and they even asked me to rewind to that part, and they watched it several times, and I think someone even watched in slow motion. They loved it so much. So this joke really worked. I don't know how it worked so well, but it did. And one of the things that, well, before I get on to the main things, the music you will hear here is that you hear here. That's an interesting way to phrase it, but yes, the music that is in the background here is "Flight of the Bumblebee," very famous tune by the genius. Thank you, Joseph. Very famous music by the genius composer Rimsky-Korsakov, who's also from Russia. Russia did get a lot of great composers. And bring out the talent in them. And this is a very famous tune, Flight of the Bumblebee. It's used in a lot of places, and it really is humorous in many ways, so I used it here to really make this scene more funny. And what you will notice, this is a practical effect. This is practical. This is not this is not like CG. This is not me cutting out a frame of myself and then moving it across the screen. This is an actual mannequin. This is an actual statue of myself in my clothes that I threw onto the ground. That I literally, my father literally shaked it like this and then threw it, and I quickly moved the camera across the screen, and then that's what we got here. This is literally that. And for such a quick, a lot of people were shocked because I could have had it be just a moving thing, but I think I couldn't have replicated the physics and the moving things that a practical thing would have. So this is all practical. This is a real mannequin I built, a life-size mannequin, and I'm gonna talk about how I built it in just a moment. But it's a lot. My grandma was even shocked at the amount of effort I put into this compared to how quick it was, because it's just 1 second on screen as it flies by. But actually, what I took a lot of pillows, and I stuffed my t-shirt as the grandfather's t-shirt with all these pillows, and then I taped to it my shirts. I put bamboo sticks as my legs. Then I covered those bamboo sticks with literal, what is it called? Not flour, but when you mix the flour with the milk and the eggs and everything, but you don't cook the pie yet, that kind of substance. Well, I made that substance, and I covered the bamboo sticks with it to replicate the human skin. And then I taped towards that my boots, which I stuffed with my socks and everything. And then I attached to that this bowl, which acted as my head, and I glued to it. I taped it to the other thing, and to it I taped a printed out cutout of my face as the grandfather, and then I even stuck the hat to it. Now, I only have one regret about this whole thing, and that's using the bowl, because everything is realistic except for this one blue bowl. And if you pause it, you can see this blue. It's out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense to be here, but this was acting as the head, but in the end, it's a big mistake because you can now see the blue. And you know that this is this blue bowl that I used when there should be no blue here at all. There's no sense for there to be any blue here. It's nonsense because he doesn't have a blue head. It should be the face here. But in the end, what you get to see is blue. But you don't see it unless you pause it. You know, if you watch it like that, especially if you don't rewind, you'll never see it. Look. It passes by so quick that nobody will ever pay attention. But I, as the director and as someone who has watched this many times and watched this in slow motion, I am really ashamed of this blue bowl. I'm really ashamed of putting it here because it ruined the whole effect, but I'm still happy with how. And look, everything is correct here. The motion blur, everything as it moves. This is why I use it practically, because I would have never been able to replicate it with my low budget by just taking a picture and moving it from one end of the screen to another. I actually made it a whole thing, and I actually threw it. And look here. I mean, this shot, this literally looks like a human, in my opinion. This literally looks like a human folding, so I was really happy with it. And if you... Let's look at slow motion, because look at after he folds, after the statue I built folds, look at how his hands kind of flop like real hands. I mean, this is why I used it practically. Look. Look, even his hands flopped. Look. Look. Look, everything is so realistic. Look, I mean, look. Let's pause here. Sorry, too late. The legs, that's like, looks like human legs. These are my boots. This is my sleeve, everything. And everything looks really in place because it's real. It's so real. Look, this shot, I mean, this literally looks so real in my opinion. And then it folds. And then look here. Even my hair, it looks like my hair. Because that's a wig that has the exact same hair color as mine. And that's why it looks so realistic. And after he falls, look at his hands. They flap. They flap like this, like your real hands would. Look at this. I mean literally, because it's a real statue. It's a real mannequin. I love this shot, in my opinion. And my grandma was like, why did you make that whole thing for just 1 second in the movie? Well, it didn't need to be more than 1 second in the movie. Then it would be pointless because you would see that it's a mannequin. The whole point was that it should have conveyed that effect, but you should not have seen that it was fake. You should have believed that it's really me doing that stunt or something along those lines. And it really served that purpose unless you slow it down. So I'm very happy with this shot. Yeah. And if you listen to the sound design here, I added the hilarious, well, a lot of people found it hilarious. There's the bone cracking, like literal bone cracking that's from the internet, along with some other like celery cracking to also kind of add to that bone thing. Many different bone cracking variations. And now it cuts back to me. So it cut from that grass back to me. And it's a pretty good transition, if I do say so myself. And to kind of make the transition even better, I kind of had the same sound effect throughout, combining those two shots with the same sound effect, so it kind of really flowed seamlessly. And here, once again, I'm continuing the bone cracking, and you can hear the bone cracking. And now I'm rising again. This is just like in the beginning. This shot we also shot on the first day, but then I redid it. And now that I think about it, maybe the first shot I did was actually better in terms of like the angle because it looked more, and I liked the acting more in the first try. But the problem is that in the first try, which I can't show it to you right now, unfortunately, but in the first try, unfortunately, you could see the wire on the ground that was going up my shorts that was like connecting to my mic. So that was very unprofessional. I couldn't keep that in. So this was reshot. Plus, the color of the grass is better here because it's lighter in terms of this looks lighter than when we initially filmed it because this was filmed during the day, and when we first filmed this shot, we did it during the evening. So here it matches up with the rest of it better. Once again, the sound design of me moving the glasses to represent it. Now I'm shocked, I'm leaning forwards, and now we're about to approach the worst shot in the whole movie. Literally the worst shot. It is the most unrealistic, the most unprofessional the most disgraceful shot that I'm very, very saddened and that makes me feel embarrassed every time I rewatch this film. I do not like this upcoming shot that you're about to see. It really ruins the whole film, and I could have actually made it work, but I guess I didn't put enough effort. It's completely on me here, and I really am ashamed of this shot here. This is meant to be a first-person perspective of the grandpa looking at the grandpa, who, by the way, we're about to talk about the grandma, because this is her, but before we get there, this is meant to be a first-person perspective. Like, this is meant to be his eyes looking into the sunglasses. And everything is great here, but I just had to ruin it by rushing through it and cropping out the glasses so badly. Just look at how badly the glasses are cropped. This is beyond a failure. This is embarrassing. I do not like this at all. The way I cropped the glasses, I really dislike. I rushed it too much, and I really could have done it much better, and now I even know how to do it much better and quickly. At the time I didn't really, but I still could have done it, but I rushed through it, and now those glasses don't look realistic. You know that they're not there, when if I cut them and cropped them out correctly and actually made them look proper, this actually could have been a great POV shot, first person perspective point of view, but I cropped it very badly. Shame on me. Shame me in the comments, please. Say how bad of a editor I am. I'm just joking, of course, but yeah. But what I do like about this shot is that it kind of the blur changes, because at first it's very unfocused, and then it changes to being focused as the grandpa's eyes are kind of adjusting to see the grandma. So you can see here the focus starts increasing, and now we can see the grandma, and it's fully focused. In terms of the grandma, oh, thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you very much. Well, obviously it's okay. I don't think it ruins the whole film per se, but and nobody really cared so far. But as a director, I'm just ashamed. You know, going back watching it, I don't like that shot at all. I find it very disappointing compared to the rest of it. Now let's talk about the grandma now, because the grandma is a very interesting character, because there are two characters in this whole thing. Well, three if you count the mouse, but the mouse is something different entirely. But in terms of, there's the dog and there's the grandma, where you don't see my face at all, because I'm acting in a mask. So I have to convey all of it through my body language. Much like David Prowse had to convey it through his body language entirely with Darth Vader. You could not see Darth Vader. You could not look into his eyes to see the emotion or the anger or anything. You had to look at his body movements, and he did a great job. And with the grandma, she barely even talks. She has like 2-3 lines or whatever throughout the whole film. So with her, it's not even with the voice. With Darth Vader, you still had James Earl Jones' voice to convey the emotion. With her, she barely talks. I had to rely entirely on my body. And I loved doing that, because that was a very fun challenge, and I think I did quite well. And once again, going back to this woman who trashed my film, one of the most crazy things she said is, "Oh, you didn't need the mask. Why did you put on the mask? They covered your face. I wanted to see you." Well, I put on the mask because that is how I want to show the characters. Once again, I'm not here to show myself. You know, I'm not here to try and show myself to the audience and be like, "Oh, this is Alexander Malinin production." No, I'm here to show these characters. I'm here to play these characters. And in order to do that, I wanted to differentiate them completely and give them different costumes. And I had this grandma mask lying around that was unutilized completely and was just lying around for so long. I was like, well, I gotta use it somewhere, and why don't I use it here? It fits the character so well. So I think it wasn't a mistake to put on the mask. In fact, I think it really served the character. And I think you still get my performance through her body language, through her movements. So this woman who was very angry at me for all of these masks, she completely missed the point. But anyways, this mask I bought in like 2015, so this is a very old mask, and I didn't use it anywhere, and it was just kind of lying in a box until I finally got to use it here, so I was very happy about it. And obviously I talked about the grandfather and how he has, the claps, the points, but with the grandmother, she has very different, you know. Well, we'll get. Oh, by the way, another clap on point. By the way, another clap on point here. Thank you, thank you. Now here we once again have the sound design of him moving the glasses, which I added later in post-production. Now here we have his jokes, which are the insulting jokes where he offends the grandma. These are the jokes that my mom found really offensive, and which is why I had to do the intro in the beginning. This is because the whole point is that he makes fun of his wife, the grandma, and he constantly calls her different names and everything. And I think it was funny. I don't know what my mother had a problem with. And my grandma Nade also thinks that it was very funny, and everyone literally thinks that it was funny, but for some reason my mother didn't. Once again, we have another shot of the grandma. Now you will notice, now we can talk about her, first of all, her costume. The green bathrobe. This is actually my actual grandma's bathrobe that she was willing to lend me, and I think it really suited the character. I really liked play, and it was very comfortable to wear too. It really helped me portray the character well. Now, what you will see with the grandma is she, once again, with every character, it's a different movement, different body language. With the grandma, you will see she crosses her arms again. She nods a lot, because I can't move. You know, I can't talk. I can't show my lips or everything because it's the mask cover, so I have to somehow move my head, so that's why I'm nodding all the time. And she has her arms crossed, and also a lot of the time she has her arms behind her back. And unlike the grandpa, who leans backwards, she always leans forwards a lot. You can see that. Now here's a funny part. There, you can hear a mosquito sound, and I kind of wave it off like goodbye mosquito. But the interesting part, there was no mosquito here. This was entirely something I just added for the character. I was like, well, how fun would it be if there was like a mosquito here, and he kind of waves it off. There was no mosquito at the time, and the mosquito sound effect is added later on. So that's entirely, you know, made up. Okay, what you will hear here, if you listen very closely, is that the sound changes. Instead of sounding one way, it suddenly shifts completely, and it sounds completely different. And the reason is because this scene was dubbed over. Because the original words that I said in order to insult the grandma were considered by my mother to be far too offensive. They were not slurs, they were not swears, they were not curses. I do not curse, I do not swear. In that regard, I am a godly man. But they were very, 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 you know, crossing the line in many ways. I don't think they were, but my mother was insulted by them. So I was like, well, if my own mother does not appreciate this humor, then who knows how many other people it might offend. And I don't want to offend people because obviously people can get offended by anything. But here I think there's a legitimate argument to be made. So I was like, well, I don't want to cause a whole controversy and everything and then have to explain myself and be, you know, blush in front of people trying to be like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. So I was like, okay, well, let's change it and have some lighter insults. Let's have him insult the grandma in a more I suppose PG, whatever you want to call it, way. So this is why the sound in this scene suddenly changes and shifts, because I dubbed over this scene in like inside the house, and even though I tried my best to make the sound the same, I even used the same microphone, it no longer was the same. So that's why it's apparent that this scene was dubbed. And what you'll also notice is that I don't even match the lips. My lips don't match here. And my sister was complaining watching this, but I'm like, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, either you should be angry at me for saying these words, or you should be glad that I redubbed it instead of complaining that the sound suddenly shifts and changes. Here we have the good, the bad, and the ugly music. Now, I actually A shout out to my best, well, one of my best friends, possibly my best friend, Alexei, for getting me, finally, being like, come on, man, and getting me to watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Because all the way back here, I used the famous theme song, but by this point, I had not watched the movie. And it's funny because Wyatt Henry sent me his, like, review after watching this film, the voice actor Wyatt Henry, and he was like, oh, what do you think of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? Because obviously, the logical assumption after hearing that I included the music is thinking that I watched the film, but I didn't watch the film. So, I'm glad that Alexei got me to watch it finally and convinced me to do it. And now I know the classics, Now I'm aware of this famous masterpiece, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, with Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone, and composed, of course, by the wonderful Ennio Morricone. Now here, we once again have me playing both characters, and I'm very happy with where I hit the line here. I don't think you can even see the line. There's one frame where we will be able to see the line because I kind of cross it, unfortunately, as the grandma. But it's very hard to spot the line here, and I'm playing both characters. And when both of them are on screen, it's very apparent how different they are. Look, the grandma leaning forwards and everything, the grandpa completely different. And the interesting thing is that I filmed two angles simultaneously. I filmed this one, and then I filmed this one. And I filmed both these angles at the same time, so I had to find a position where I had to find a way to position two cameras where both the two cameras would have... I'm sorry, it's getting late. I can't put my thoughts together. I had to find a position where both my two cameras could get me to have two characters in the same frame, if that makes any sense. Once again, look, crossing her arms, leaning forward, this guy leaning backwards, stretching out his arms, putting them forward. Completely different characters. And here it's also dubbed... Well, I can see why. I mean, it is a common trick to play two characters. I mean, but that's the fun thing that cinema allows you to do if you have the budget, and not only, I suppose, the budget, but really the knowledge, the experience, and the software to do it, Once again, this scene is dubbed over because my original insults were much more offensive, and my family was like, oh, no, this will destroy the reputation, whatever, and so this was dubbed over to include lesser offensive words for him to insult the grandma. Okay, this shot I really enjoy. You have this focused and this blur, and a very good look at the grandma. So I'm very happy about this, how this shot turned out. Oh yeah, another thing I missed is that at some points the grandma kind of puts her her finger next to her chin. That's another character trait that is important to her. And yeah, once again, the finger here. Okay, here we come. This is the scene that Lucamus Prime found the most funny. By the way, check out Lucamus, great guy, fantastic YouTuber. He just streamed yesterday. He streams on Saturday, fantastic guy. Yesterday, when he reacted to this as a try not to laugh challenge, this is the one scene. Well, he also once again the biggest laugh to everyone was that one I showed earlier where the grandpa flies off and breaks his back. But this scene was something that he almost broke at. He almost started laughing. He could barely contain his laughter. Because here the grandma has this hilarious walk where she basically, you know, flaps her hands like this, and she walks very quickly, and she, you know, moves like this, and stuff like that. And so that he found very funny. And another so let's watch the scene, and then I'll comment, because I think we need I need to show it before I can really talk much about it. Okay, yeah. One of the things you will notice here is, you know, very funny movements like this, and this walk. If you can guess who it was inspired by, I'll give you like 10 seconds. Then you will get nothing, because I don't have any prizes to offer, but you will get a clap on the shoulder from me. I will give you I will say, good job. Who do you think this walk was inspired by? This hilarious, crazy walk the grandma has. What character was it inspired by? 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm revealing it. The walk was inspired by Jar Jar Binks, because Ahmed Best, the actor for Jar Jar Binks, has this hilarious style of walking he developed for the character, for the Gungan, you know, Jar Jar Binks, and he kind of flaps his hands, and he's very loose, and he's very, you know, he moves his body around a lot, and that was really my main inspiration here, and I think it really worked as comedic relief. But the funny thing is here, because I have this mask on, and I want the mask to be in frame all the time, to basically be in frame, I have to look at the camera all the time. And because of that, I have to kind of have my chin up, because I'm hunched downwards and everything. So this walk was actually, thank you, Joseph. I'm glad you enjoyed that walk. So in terms of this walk was actually quite dangerous. Well, dangerous, it's not like anybody could possibly be harmed or any, no, not in that way. But the problem with this walk is that in actuality, the way I walked, I could barely see anything, because the mask covered almost all my face, and the part where I could see through it, I had to look directly into the camera so that the mask doesn't go too down, and so that you don't see my hair. So I could not see the ladder I was walking on, and I'm even walking upstairs here, up this staircase, a small staircase, and I could not see it. I had to guess where the steps were, because if I look too down, you will be able to see my hair. The illusion is ruined. So I had to look directly into the camera, and at the same time I had to walk very fast to keep up to speed, and to keep that energy and that funny movement. So yeah, and the sound design here is some very, very squeaky boots. Now, these are like meant to be clown boots, but oh my goodness, did I have a hard time finding this sound effect. Because most of the time, even when I was like literally searching clown boots, they gave me these very realistic sounds that sounded like this. But that's not what I wanted, so I wanted this. I wanted this. And I don't think I even found those boots in the end, so I just used a squishy bowl sound effect and just duplicated it many times, and those were the boots. And I think I made a good call on using that sound effect, because Lucas found it quite hilarious. I will say that. Here, these were shot on different days, because this one was shot later on, because it was a more complex shot, because my mother had to move the camera along with me. And this one was shot on the very first day. Now we get to this one. This shot I'm also quite happy with. It's a beautiful shot just in terms of the back. What is that beep from? As I said, the beep is I took the sound of this squishy bowl from the internet, and I tried to replicate it as the grandma's footsteps, because the grandma, for comedic effect, I wanted to have her have these crazy squeaky slippers, and so I took the sound of a squishy bowl and I duplicated it many times, and that's how I made her slippers sound effect. Here I have the grandma walking here, and I have myself. I love this shot because I just love the forest and these plants, and it looks beautiful in terms of the colors and the contrast. And then I have obviously the grandpa. Once again, this whole scene was redubbed because you cannot imagine how many insults I had for the grandma and plant that ended up being removed because they were considered too vulgar or too vile or something like that by others, even though they were not slurs, they were not swear words, they were not curse words. And I even, before I filmed all of this, I asked my parents, what about these words? They're not slurs, right? And everything like that. And they confirmed it, but then they still had a problem with it later on, which is outrageous and it's unfair and it's preposterous, but so be it. And here we have the grandma walking on one place and the grandpa calling her. Now, many have asked me, why is the grandma walking? Why is the grandma walking but not actually moving forward? Well, the thing is, because when I filmed the grandpa, he's looking into this direction at the grandma. So if she walked like this here, then in that case, he would be just looking at a wall, which would make no sense. And so I had to keep the grandma walking in one spot so that he actually looked at something and wasn't, didn't seem like like he had schizophrenia, thinking that there was something here when there really wasn't. Okay, this shot also I enjoy. This is actually, if you look at the treehouse, there's this little segment where it's like a small balcony, and I actually placed the tripod on this kind of balcony of the wooden house. So this is kind of looking downwards, and this is a good shot, really showing everything here. Once again, look, these, because this woman complained, why am I always clapping and everything, but these are not accidents. I very thoroughly thought about every movement every character has, and just, I paused at a good point, because once again, look, grandma has her arm crossed, grandma is nodding, he is putting his finger. Here we have three people in one shot, all played by me, so I'm upping the antics, as they say. Unfortunately, I do not like this part because, you see, since I have my mic attached to my phone, which is filming this particular angle, and my mic is going under my shirt and going like this and everything, when I moved to like film this character, the mic kind of caused the phone to move a little, so it messed it up by just a millimeter, but that millimeter is quite enough for you to see this line right here. And this line, if you notice here, this line right here, this is darker, this is lighter, this is where the cut is. This is where I film one shot, this is where I film another. So this is a bit of a disappointing part. This shot I also enjoy. It's quite cinematic, because once again, this is blurred out, and this is quite in focus, so I liked it. I enjoyed what I did here. Once again, he's insulting the grandma. And if you listen closely to the ambience, you can hear a lot of the birds, Obviously, all of the birds, everything like that, that was added in post-production. And here again, once again, the grandma has the, hands like this. This is actually where she's a little similar to the grandpa. Well, not really, though, because even when he has his hands like this, he's always leaning backwards. She's hunching forwards. But you can look, I made the hands kind of old and wrinkler, so in this shot, so that's interesting, I suppose. Here we have this transition that I enjoyed. I like these transitions where it's kind of like a expanding circle. It's pretty fun, so here you go. And once again, remember, I'm telling you, there's a lot of reused footage because I only had this one shot, so I constantly reused it. Reduce, reuse, recycle. But at the end of the day, people really love reusing and reducing and recycling stuff nowadays, don't they? So I suppose it's not really a big issue, is it? But yeah, I used it here. And then I also used it, I used it here, and then I used it here. So this is the third time already that you see this shot. Okay, now let's talk about this shot, because this is, I think we'll go for another 7 minutes, by the way, and then wrap it up, because I'm getting a little tired and it is getting pretty late, but we will continue analyzing this eventually again. I promise you. In terms of the background here, you can see that the background is very different from everything else. This looks like something completely different, right? This looks like something completely, well, because this is completely different. This is not even shot in Moscow. This was shot in Tomsk. This was shot in Tomsk. Well, the grandpa here, this is he's filmed on a green screen, and I added him later. But this grandma, this part I shot in Tomsk, because I was really, okay, well, let's go forwards a bit, and because then it'll make more sense. Here we have the scene of the grandma's mask falling off, and it being revealed that she's actually this witch, and she has a much scarier face beneath that. The problem is that when it comes to this grandma, that part where she has her mask fly off, I tried like 10 times, I could not do it. Every time the mask was falling off, either it wasn't falling off at all and it was just staying attached to me, or it was just flying too low and you could see my face and everything. So this was not working out, and I shot it and I shot it and I shot it and I shot it, and it did not work. So then, as fortune would have it, I go to Tomsk, where I have all of my relatives, and I decide, well, I'm gonna try it there. And for this one shot, I have never disclosed this until now. This has been a complete secret, but here we are. You know, sometimes the craziest things get exposed on streams, which is why you should attend them, people who aren't here, because I know if you're rewatching this, yeah, this is why you should attend them, because crazy things might get revealed, exposed. There is one shot in this whole movie, well, except for the mannequin, but that doesn't really count because that's not a live person. There is one shot in the whole movie where it's not actually me, where it's another person playing one of the characters. I know. Alexander Malinin exposed, Alexander Malinin canceled, he lied to us, everything, whatever. But in this shot, it's not me. It's my wonderful relative, Daniel Gushin, who is playing the grandma in the shot, because I could not for the life of me get that mask off. I could not get it to fly off without my face being seen. So he stood in for me and actually did this kind of stunt, whatever you want to call it, and got the mask flying off of him for this one shot, because I just couldn't do it. I wasn't able to. In fact, we were trying to get this shot of the mask flying off for so long that one time we even tried this dangerous thing where I had a person have this hook, udichka, what is an udichka? Have this long hook attached to the mask and basically had it pulled off of me. And that was so dangerous, and we were so reckless with thinking about it, that it actually kind of pulled on my lips, and it caused the part of my lips to tear off. And after that, I was like, oh my goodness, I did not think this through. I'm not going to be repeating this again. So we tried all kinds of methods, and it just didn't work. So that's why I had Daniel stand in for me here. That's why this is shot in Tomsk, because he's obviously living in Tomsk, and he stood in for me for this one, for just this one shot. And even here, this is me. This is just for the part where the mask flies off, that's it. This is green screen, because I can't, the grandfather was green screen, added in later. And so we have the grandma with the mask here. This is Daniel Gushin. You even look at his hair. That's not my hair. That's not my ear. So if you look at it closely, you would see the signs before. But I think this shot just was marvelous. I just love how it worked out. And we have it flying off here and landing here. And I think it worked marvelously and really worked with the comedic effect. And then we have this other mask here beneath. And this other mask is the witch mask, which I also had in my box for like many years. I bought it because I bought out almost like the whole costume shop, and then I was like, well, what do I do with these costumes? I wore them one time and I never did anything with that. So they were really well utilized for this film. So this is the witch mask, which I also had lying around and never really got involved in anything, but here I finally got it involved as the true face of the grand. And I think it's quite hilarious that I'm the grandma. This mask is meant to be her real face. This is meant to be her real face in terms of in canon in the universe. And then the mask before that was meant to be an actual mask that she was wearing to hide her identity. I find that kind of ironic, and I love doing that plot twist. And to signify this horrifying moment, if you listen closely, you will hear you have Beethoven's famous piece, ta 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 ta, ta 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 ta, and I felt it was very appropriate here. So that's, and I think that's about the right place to end the stream. We're at 70 minutes, 1 hour 10 minutes. I think this is a great place to stop. And tomorrow we will continue the discussion. Thank you everyone so much. God bless. I am glad that we did not run out of battery and that this stream will, because of that, be kept. And so thank you everyone very much for watching. If you're tuning in later on, I hope you enjoyed this live replay, whatever you're watching, and have a great day, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Thank you so much. You're all great people. Thank you, Joseph, for being here. Thank you everyone for not being here, who will be watching it later on. And please join next time, because I can't with how few people are joining us. Where are my 1,600 something subscribers? Nowhere to be found. So please join next time. Thank you, and thank you, Joseph, for joining, and everyone who may have joined but didn't comment if there was anyone like that. Thank you. God bless.